Welcome to the Future Ventures podcast on Scaling with Clarity. Ben Klepacki is the co-founder of WestGen Technologies, a Calgary-based clean tech company tackling one of the most overlooked problems in energy, methane emissions. But at its core, WestGen really is a hybrid power generation company. His work sits at the intersection of traditional oil and gas and climate innovation, developing technology that can eliminate up to 99% of methane venting at well sites, while actually improving economics for producers. Ben's journey started with a sketch on a napkin and turned into a fast-scaling company deployed across well pad sites in North America. Ben is betting everything on the idea that the fastest path to impact isn't replacing the energy system, but rather it's fixing the ones that we already rely on. Welcome to the stage, Ben.
Maxim, thank you very much for having me on here.
It's absolute pleasure. Love your story. Would love if we can start with kind of like the origin story. I know Ben is a professional engineer, but how did you come to do what you're doing currently, and where was the idea born for WestGen?
I appreciate that. It's a little convoluted story. I think similar to many entrepreneurs out there, I actually started my career coming out of school with dreams of changing the world, and got into alternative energy, did wind and hydro for a while, and to be honest, became a little disillusioned with this there. At the time, I was a project manager on Canada's largest wind farm, and I had this whole save the world, do alternative energy thing going on in my head. The amount of energy that it took us to build that wind farm, we were roughly 700 cubes of concrete. We had to build our own concrete batch plant. The turbine blades got shipped up from Brazil. The cells got brought in from Denmark and from Germany, and I can't even remember where the towers came in from, like Africa or something like that. We barged all these things in, and I remember back calculating how much energy was going into there, and realizing that the future, it's an all of the above solution, that it wasn't this magical solution that we had. And then I ended up moving over into oil and gas, and realizing that I think our traditional energy sources play a role, particularly when we have all the energy scarcity challenges that we do around the globe right now. There's no magical technology until we have fusion available that's going to change everything overnight. So we need to find a way to develop our traditional resources as responsibly as possible, and I think they play a large role in our energy future for the foreseeable future.
So, Ben, I mean, somebody would say like moving from alternative energy to oil and gas, it's almost like a radical departure or 180 pivot. But from our prior conversation, you see this is a mix of all energies rather than one to the displacement of another. And maybe solar is increasingly becoming more important. But kind of like, what took you away from what you were doing with wind farms and going into an oil and gas?
It was, so the way I look at energy, I take that mechanical engineer perspective. Everything is just watts out, and then you have an energy input. And you have to look holistically at the whole system. So when you consider the amount of energy that goes into making concrete, that goes into making the steel, turbine blades typically have a lifespan of around 20 to 25 years. And you put this all together, you realize that I had a friend who actually did his PhD thesis on, he calls it well-to-wheels energy cycles. Power generation technologies. You realize that they actually run pretty close, and there's this massive opportunity because we're going to use fossil fuels. We're talking about, even if you take power generation out, jet fuel. There's talk around hydrogen-powered planes, things like that. those are so far in the future. Your energy density with hydrogen is so low compared to jet fuel. You're not getting away from oil and gas in the foreseeable future. So I realized the biggest impact I can make is let's go over into oil and gas and let's help develop this resource as responsibly as possible. And the low-hanging fruits, talk about methane there, was, I was working as a well pad design engineer. We were venting methane left, right, and center. And there's this whole efficiency concept. The climate change, venting methane, yes, that's a good thing. And here is this energy source that we're just venting to the atmosphere that we can capture and we can use. And it's just so inefficient. And that just ate at me as an engineer. Like, there has to be a way to solve this problem. And that's kind of what kicked off WestGen.
That's amazing. And so in the birth of WestGen, do you kind of like what was the ideation path? I'm assuming that you said that was eating at you as an engineer. I'm assuming that you started to do a calculation and schematics and graphics. Say, okay, well, if we do this, if we capture the methane and pump it back in and use it as a fuel source, kind of like walk me through kind of like how did you take the step from, hey, I'm working for somebody else, to no, I'm going to take the plunge and actually go and start a company?
So I actually need to take a step back, and I'm going to answer your question a little bit differently.
Sure.
Because WestGen was not the first attempt to start a company.
Okay.
It was just the first successful one. And I think this is ultra important for any of your listeners that have interest in starting their own company one day. Learn a lot of lessons in the first kind of iterations. So there was a group of us, we met, I think it was about monthly for at least a year, year and a half. This would have been like 2015, 2016. We started building out different business ideas. And there was everything from my brother-in-law, who wound up being a co-founder with me, was throwing out importing Japanese toilet seats. Another gentleman was talking about anti-static cat collars. I had to walk through the physics with them and show you couldn't do that. And we actually had the software idea first that was around trying to manage equipment life cycles and risk through that. And we ended up barking down this path for, luckily didn't throw too much money. We parked down there probably 8 months and started interviewing potential clients and looking at what an MVP, a minimum viable product, would look like. And then after 8-9 months of this, we realized that if we were super successful, we could pay ourselves $50,000-$60,000 a year, like 5 years down the road. The business model broke. We went back to the drawing board, and we literally had this list of ideas. And what became WestGen, this concept of the ePod, was something that you mentioned in the beginning. I'd sketched out on a napkin. So I was working with a client up in Northeast BC. We were having a power generation problem. I was working with them to try and eliminate methane venting. And all of the power generation technologies, at the time, there's what we call the power generation gap. So if you wanted to make a couple 100 kilowatts of power, there was a lot of existing technology out there. You've got your Caterpillar, Waukesha engines, microturbines, auto derivative engines, GMs and Fords. And if you wanted to only make 100 watts or a couple 100 watts of power, you had fuel cells, you had solar. This gap that wound up being exactly what you needed to run air compressors to eliminate the methane venting through pneumatics in kind of 1 to 50 kilowatts. There was nothing reliable out there. So we started looking at what the automotive industry was doing at the time. The Prius had been out, and the whole concept there is, let's not run an engine 100% of the time. Let's run it at its optimum point, its optimal efficiency point. Let's store all the energy. If you've got engines, when they're running partly loaded, your engine has a lot of ancillary loads. Oil pumps, water pumps, alternators, things like that take up about 20 to 30% of the energy. So if you're not running that thing fully loaded, you're actually wasting a tremendous amount of energy. And we ended up on a flight back from Grande Prairie. I started sketching out call it the Toyota Prius for stationary power generation, and bringing this all together. So this first software idea didn't work. Started looking at this WestGen idea. We ran the business model. It looked like it made sense. I started talking to some of my clients at the time, and there was interest. So as we went around starting a company very intentionally, it was always something I wanted to do. And I think it's really important to know that when you get out there, if it's something that your listeners are interested in, you're going to have failures, going to have ideas that don't work. The first one was a complete flunk, and you just got to get back and you got to try. And then the other piece is you got to jump in both feet. We learned that very quickly because you're trying to do it on while you have another job. You want to stay safe. You want to keep that income coming. And the challenge is the second you start a business, everything's going to go wrong. And if you're not in there and committed, you're just going to walk away. But if you have a good idea, there's going to be things you can do that you can pivot and make it work. And we needed to do that like crazy over the first 6-9 months to actually get the business model to work.
Yeah, agree. I mean, all in commitment. I mean, even when you're looking for an investment opportunities, that's the same thing for us. It's like, is the founding team all in? Are they going to walk through fires? They're going to smash through walls? Because that's for early stage companies, it's not so much the idea. It's like, what's the capacity of the founding team to execute on the idea?
100%.
And so, okay, so you started a company. I'm assuming you quit your job, and you started working on the idea. How long did it take to actually build the ePod? And then how long did it take to actually acquire your index client? Kind of walk me through a bit of a timeline.
For sure. I've been lucky over the last, call it 1.5 to 2 years, to be in a spot where I've been able to pull myself out of the day-to-day operation of the business and start doing some mentorship with some other companies starting up. And the single biggest piece of advice I have for people that have started companies is fail fast.
Okay.
Do absolutely not spend your time doing research and trying to perfect your first product. And we went through some accelerators, and it was funny. We got 2 polar opposite pieces of advice when we were starting.
Oh, really? Okay.
You get this thread of accelerators, and I'm stereotyping here, so I don't mean to offend anyone, that comes up from academia. They come up from the government, and it's all about perfection in research. And
TRL 4, TRL 5, TRL 6. Get it? Yeah, got it.
And we were TRL 1 to TRL 8 in 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
Just go and build it.
Yeah.
That was this other piece of advice. And it's really funny. You have I think we did 3 different accelerators, and 2 of these were backed by either a large school or a government program, and you get the same advice. And this other one, Creative Destruction Lab.
Oh, CDL, love it. Yeah.
Love them. CDL, and what Alice Reimer's done there is phenomenal. And every single mentor in there has come from business. They've done it before. And they pounded into us, no, go out, try it, fail, try again.
Yeah.
So we just got out and we built the product. And then we were testing and found a company that's really liked the concept. So we said, hey, you're trying to accomplish X, Y, Z. You're trying to reduce your methane emissions. You're trying to increase your efficiency of your power systems, reduce your operating costs, all the value prop. We've got this prototype. It probably is going to have a couple of issues off the start. We'll sell it to you for cost. We didn't have tons of money. We were bootstrapping this. And the one thing I found, and I love Calgary for this, there's this, you'd think these large oil and gas companies would just crush you as a little company. It was the opposite. They were so welcoming and so warm, and we're willing to work with you around that. Nice. So we ended up selling our prototype, didn't make any money off it, but sold it for essentially our cost of materials, and got it out into the field right away and learned. and then found a couple more companies and had the same kind of conversation. And say of 6 or 7 companies, maybe there was 8 companies that we had in the first 2 years, year and a half. 2 maybe didn't really understand the concept that we were trying to get prototypes out, no matter how much we talked, and they'd get angry when they went wrong. Everyone else worked with you. It allows you to perfect the product.
Yeah.
And even more importantly than that, you're getting feedback that entire time. So if we spent that year and a half building isolated on our own, we'd come out with a product that they'd be like, we don't want this.
Yeah.
Instead, you have it in the field. You're getting real-time feedback from operators, from multiple operators in multiple areas. And it took us 2 years to build or to perfect it, but I think we got there much quicker. And in the interim, we were making revenue. We were able to bootstrap this thing along.
I mean, every entrepreneur should follow the same path. Perfection is the enemy of done. And if you're looking to build that's the advice we give to any one of the portfolio companies or customers we work with, is like customer discovery. Nothing beats customer discovery. Be in the field, talk to them, learn from them in terms of, are you building somebody that somebody wants or needs? And there's difference between like, wow, that's gonna help improve, versus no, this is gonna drive a massive improvement for what we do. And I'm assuming that's the case. I'm assuming that for the pilot clients, and walk me through it. Did the pilot clients kind of run this in parallel as a redundancy system? Because I'm assuming that there was a risk of failure. So kind of like walk me through, how did you de-risk? Because I mean, oil and gas companies are notorious for risk management. So I'm assuming that they would have had to have some kind of a failover mechanism in place to make sure that this thing works before they said, no, we're going to try this inherently.
So the problem that we were solving on these sites, and you mentioned this when you first did the introduction, we really, in the beginning, we focused on methane elimination. Had this solar hybrid proprietary power tech. It worked great, but the problem we were solving at the time was, how do you eliminate methane venting from pneumatics on oil and gas sites?
Yeah.
So the fallback was just to go back to what they were.
Air.
Yeah. The air, purge it with nitrogen, and then go back to using your fuel gas. In that case, they didn't need any power, and they were able to drop back there. Coming back to when I go through kind of those first 6 or 8 companies that we were working with, the 6 that went well really understood the concept of trying this, and when they were building these well pads, we had discussions around the design so they could build that redundancy. The 2 that I'd say went less well was where you're working with one group of engineers that are the bring in the new tech or the clean tech guys. And we found out very quickly that they were incredibly siloed, and they didn't pass that on to the operators, and they didn't pass it on to the facilities guys. When something happened with your unit, those guys would be furious. What the bleep? This thing's supposed to work. And then you're coming back, and you're like, no, it's a prototype. And they're like, why do we install this? It's junk. We certainly have some of those conversations, and then, but the ones that worked well, and once again, advice to anyone out there, we always call it 3 wide, 3 deep. So talk to as many people as possible, get outside of the niche of the new tech group that's helping to bring you in, and get into the operators, get into the facilities group, get into the management, make sure they all know. And then, it's actually typically not that hard to build a redundancy in.
That's amazing. So, I want to double click on this because a lot of people need to appreciate this. I'm assuming that the first 8 clients were smaller, junior oil and gas companies. Because I see now you have big names like Shell. I mean, those are the supermajors. So, kind of walk me through, what was your path in terms of enterprise sales, going into big companies?
Yeah, it would. So it surprised you. It was a mix, everything.
Okay.
The very first client was small and really believed around the new technology. Painted Pony, I think I'm allowed to say that, not around anymore. And to the management,
they just got bought out, didn't they?
They were bought out a couple of years ago, but that team went on to form Quitno.
Okay.
Then we got picked up by Signet. I think Mike Backus there started a new company himself. Tim Michaelis was someone else that we worked with. He's on the facility side. Both of them absolutely phenomenal. I know Mike's a mentor at CDL now as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they just love the concept of the ecosystem and new tech and really drive efficiency in the oil and gas world. So they were our first adopter, and that helped a lot. It is a true challenge. Nobody wants to be first. Everyone wants to be second.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We had the first one out. Second was actually Petronas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I get in trouble sharing that. And then we had a series of small and big guys.
Mm-hmm.
Shell came on probably around 9 or 10.
Okay.
Had a couple issues with Shell, but overall it went fairly well. They understood that it was a trial unit, and that relationship has continued.
So I want to double click on something else, Ben. You talked about 3 wide, 3 deep. I mean, you put in different words than what I'm used to. But for me, this is change management. Talk to as many people. So how do you identify who are the innovation or change champion within those companies? Because obviously, it's kind of like finding the beauty around them, because they're the people that are going to be the proponent within the company for adoption of new technologies, a new way of doing things. So how do you find those people?
It's a great question. I think it's a little bit of a shotgun approach. So everyone here is probably familiar with the adoption bell curve, and you have your early adopters. They're willing to take the risk. You have to go out. Those kind of people are going to be interested about any tech, and they're not always in the position you need them to be, but getting a champion, to your comment, getting a champion in the company is absolutely necessary for any early stage venture.
Yep.
And we just went out and we talked to as many people as possible. So we probably did 20 lunch and learns, 20 or 30 lunch and learns with different producers, engineering companies. You can see the people that the vast majority, like the adoption curve, are, hey, this is great. Come to their product. Yeah. And then you'll see the one person perk up.
Yeah.
And it happened countless times where we went into a room and nobody perked up. So we always finished with a question, well, who would you recommend? Who do you think we'd be a really good fit for? Who would like to try?
Yep.
And what I learned is that early majority, so that first half of the, not the early adopters, but the next stage in that bell curve, they want somebody to go and trial this. They're interested, they just don't want it to be them. So they will introduce you to the person that's going to go and trial it. It's in their best interest. They're like, hey, I know this guy. He likes to try this stuff. So they're doing half the work and asking that question, hey, who can you introduce me to that you think would really like to give this a shot? And then all of a sudden you're leveraging everyone else's network. That helped a lot.
I mean, that's amazing. And a lot of companies have adopted this fast follower approach. And most notably, Apple is in that category. They don't necessarily invent things. They just take the things that they already invented and make them the best they could be. Because think about it from the perspective of an oil and gas company. Somebody's going to take some risk off the table and come and prove out this, and I'll come in as a fast follower, and then I already know that it works. It's going to drive economics for me. It's going to drive emission reduction. Like, why would I not do it?
Yeah. 100%.
So what were the hardest things in year one, in year two? Kind of like, and at what point did you feel like, I can breathe now? We have the momentum. It's just a matter of scaling up.
Those are two different questions. So year one, like we started March of 2019.
Okay.
And so beginning of year one, I mentioned we were a couple of three months or something, 4 months to build that first prototype. We got it sold after 6 months, started collecting feedback. And then we, just at the end of year one, we lined up a couple more sales of models to ship out. And then, so year one, the other big challenge, we didn't pay ourselves anything So we were that mortgage the house, pull all your savings, and you're living on a university string budget. Both my business partner and I had our first children at the same time. He had one literally like 2 weeks after we started the company. Our first was 3 or 4 months after we started the company. So you're kind of all in, and that there was a lot of sleepless nights in the beginning, a lot of sleepless nights. And then COVID hit. And overnight, so we'd gone and we'd sold 4 units, and we were celebrating like crazy. It was amazing. We were profitable. Obviously very lean at that time, just a couple employees. And then oil went negative, and every single one of those orders got canceled in a day. I remember going, well, looks like we're bankrupt. There it goes. And then it turned around. And I think...
I think this was almost 5 years to the day, because I think it was in April of 2021 when it went, it went negative for like a day. But yes, yeah.
It was, I remember I was on my way back from Fort St. John, seeing one of our units up there, driving back at the time. And I want to say it was March.
Oh, maybe it was March, end of March.
No, it was March 19th that the lockdowns came.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's right after St. Paddy's Day. And I still remember getting that call from the first time. And one company had ordered 2 of them, and I was like, oh shit, that's when it really clued in that they might go. So there's a roller coaster. There's always a roller coaster. First 2 years, I thought we were going to go bankrupt, at least 15 times.
Wow.
And to that comment of being in, I truly believe, having gone through this process now, that if you're all in, you find a way through, and you're paying attention to customers. It's not that they didn't want the product. They wanted it. They just didn't want it right now. The wells got canceled. So we were able to call them up and work out some terms where they were, so we'd outlaid some cash to kick off these orders, and you just say, hey, we're a small company, it's going to bankrupt us. Can you pay us some deposit? We'll give you some deposit.
Yeah.
They wanted the product. And then you talk to your suppliers, you're like, hey, our orders got, canceled, but now they've agreed it's delayed. So can we push this down the road a little bit? You're still going to make the sale. You need 180 days to do or something like that. And most people end up working with that.
Amazing.
As to when the stress came off, so we talked about this a little bit beforehand, and we went through an interesting roller coaster. So WestGen scaled very, very quickly. We were quite successful in the first kind of 2-3 years. We ended up doing a fundraise to help expand down into the States. And then we pivoted.
Ben, are you comfortable saying what's the current annual revenue? Or if you're not, that's okay. I'm just trying to get a scale.
I probably shouldn't throw that out at this point. I can talk about, I don't mind sharing past revenues, because we've done a roller coaster.
Sounds good.
We were, these are off the top of my head, I want to say we were 400K that first year, 400K that first year. And then we scaled about 4 or 5x for the first 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So call it 2 million the second, like 9 million I think the third, or 3 million the second, 9 million the third, and then things went really well, and we were up in the 20 to mid 30s.
Okay.
And we lost our focus. We had some differing directions on a leadership level. If anyone here hasn't read Good to Great by Jim Collins, like that is an absolute must read. And I feel that if I were a venture company or a private equity company, I would force
every one of you founders,
portfolio companies. The hedgehog concept is absolutely what we did wrong. Okay. And we ended up chasing 17 different shiny objects, and we had no clear direction. We started pivoting into a digital strategy and software. we couldn't get any products done. We went from this company that pushed out a first prototype in 3 months to taking a year and a half to kind of get any iteration done. We got bloated and we were standing still. We did a brand change to hyper focus on clean tech, this new emissions reduction software, and that fell quite flat on its face. And in June of 24, we were almost bankrupt. We were running out of cash. We were losing money like crazy, and had to pivot again. And I would say it's not really until the last, so a group of us did a management buyout. We took a controlling stake back of the company in June, and that's where we started as WestGen. We went to Converge, the whole roller coaster, up straight into the ground, pivoted back as WestGen, and really, if there's one piece of magic sauce that we had in this rebrand, and when I stepped into the CEO role, it was focus on your hedgehog concept. Just one thing, do it super well, be the best there is at your product. And that went well, and the company turned around, and it wasn't until, it took us about 6 or 9 months to 6 months or so to become profitable again. And wasn't until the last kind of year and a half where I've been able to step back and say, hey, we're in a good spot. I don't need to be.
I can breathe.
I can breathe. So it was years. There was a period there when we took on money where stress came off for a little bit, but then there's the stress performing for your investors. So,
can I just ask you about this?
Please.
And I completely agree with the hedgehog concept. We have a different saying, just because it's a lot more memorable. We call it niches make riches. So focus on one thing and do it extremely well before you go and expand and be everything to everybody. But you said you did a leverage management, like management buyout. Did you buy out the private equity firm? Are they still on a cap table? Kind of like, well, like
you're a minority shareholder on the cap
minority. Okay. And where did the direction come in to become a software company? Like, how do you view the investment from the private equity firm? As an enabler? As maybe a distraction?
This is a really hard question to answer. So I actually, where we went south was, you mentioned where coming into the software firm come from. It might have worked if we fully pivoted. I had a co-founder at the time, and I think the biggest challenge was WestGen and the core business plan. That's what I knew, and that's what I wanted to do. And he had a different vision as we did the raise in a way to scale, which in fairness, like the scaling that he wanted to do was far above what any ePod would bring from a revenue standpoint. So we tried to go in multiple directions. Where this becomes a challenge is, and this is why I'm a massive fan of governance. So even though we did a management buyout and technically don't need a board or any directors, very first thing I did was reform a board and a varied board. And where I think we had challenges before is our board was 100% constituted in private equity. And I fully believe you need diversity.
Okay.
To be effective. We didn't have people with manufacturing experience. We didn't have people with starting and scaling companies experience. We had one gentleman, I should say it wasn't in 100% private equity. We did have one gentleman who came from large cap oil and gas. And that's one perspective. You talk about how do you get the shells? Well, there's a path to get the shells, and it's a different path than getting the painted ponies that we started in the Insignia. We needed someone in small cap oil and gas and engineering. We reformed the board, I think where we broke down was, I'm trying to be careful because our board chair was good and he wasn't being given the information he needed, and he didn't have the variety of opinions to push on him, and it made it very challenging for him to make decisions. And boards ideally aren't fingers in their direction, but they needed to make some changes, and we were too late making those changes and providing that clear direction. And I think that really good governance is the thing that solves those problems. I'm president and CEO of the company. I don't mind sharing that between my wife and I. We have a controlling stake. And first thing I did is set up a board that I'm accountable to. Is the most important thing. As long as I think you have, and I'm sorry, I'm pivoting slightly to the second part here. I always talk about two concepts. I call them me-go and we-go. Everyone's got ego. Everyone wants to be successful in the world. And me-go people are those who need to be in charge, and they need to feel important, and it needs to be their way. And we-go people are the ones that need to win, but they don't care who scores the winning basket or who's captain of that team. And I think that's the most important thing. And when you set up good governing or good governance, I don't need to be, and anyone on the leadership team, we don't need to be right individually. We need to be right as a team.
Agree.
And I have no problem being pivoted off a direction from, particularly on my board. Every single person on my board is twice my age with 5 times the amount of experience. That's fantastic. Let's learn from that.
Okay.
So I think that is where we went wrong, following too many directions. Where are we now and what drives us right? Having really clear direction and strong governance, strong board.
Yeah, I agree. We see this across a lot of companies, and we do a lot of governance work. And you start with a standard, like, hey, what are we trying to accomplish? Who do we need on the board? Let's build a board composition matrix. Like, what are the skills that we need? Do we have legal, financial, governance? Like, whatever experience we need. And so a lot of companies think that they can figure it out, or they don't have enough independent directors. And then it's like, well, how do you separate church from state? How do you separate like what's within the company? But one of my mentors when I was at Pembina was Jared Sprock, who is the chief operating officer at Pembina. And one of the advice that he gave me that it still stuck with me is like, we win when people on the team are high-five each other. It's like, well, what does this mean? And like, well, when you're not actively directing the traffic and people are just doing what they need to do, because like there's not a saying, greatness is in the agency of others. Like, it's kind of like what you do is your concept around we go. It's not about me and what I do. And when it came to performance review, it's not about what I did. It's what the team did. How will we win as a team? So I wish more people would adopt this, because that's how you scale company fast, is by having people that are going in the same direction, rowing the boat at the same time, at the right cadence, like following the same direction.
100%. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got for leadership is, when you win, make sure it's the team that wins.
When you lose, it's you. Okay. 100%. So you mentioned that you found had big, bold visions around scaling up or going into the software space, and that potentially could have provided a much higher upside. Would love to get your perspective around how do you manage founder dynamics, and in the current environment where you can even have AI as an advisor, AI as a companion. Do you see more companies emerging as single founder rather than, because the standard advice when you go through an accelerator is have a co-founder. If you're a business co-founder, have a technical founder. Kind of like, what's your perspective?
So I have to lay it all out on the table here. I'll be honest. I'm very grateful for having a co-founder. I would have never had the guts to go and start a company on my own. I always wanted to start a company, and I was terrified failing. And if there's one thing my co-founder had, it was an incredible confidence that we are going to succeed.
Figure it out. Yeah.
That helped me a lot in those early periods when you're going through the roller coaster and you're failing, and helped me keep going. I do think that managing founder dynamics, it's really hard. And my co-founder's off with a different company now, and that's quite successful for him, and it's a more established company. I think there's different styles of leadership that are needed in different stages of a company. And it's really hard when you're starting a company and two people want to both start a company, to figure out between the two of you, because I think it's rare that it's both of you, who's got that skill set for the startup and who's got the skill for the scale up, and what stage of the company.
Do you guys have assigned pathways? I'm accountable for this, you're accountable for this? Or it was kind of like, well, we just got to figure it out together?
We did have assigned accountabilities. He was very much more structured in how he wanted to approach things and process. And I would actually say that to anyone listening, the person you want starting and scaling the company isn't the structured person. It's the scrappy person. There's not to name drop, went to school and was friends with Michelle Romano.
Oh yeah.
So one of the Dragon's Den ladies, awesome lady. And one of the things that I remember chatting with her about kind of right after her stuff started to take off was scrappiness that you need when you start a company. Once again, you're not doing research, you get out there, you fail, you take some punches, you get up, you win no matter what. And that's the attitude that you need for the startup and scale up. And then there's this second perspective of building in process that I think comes when you break maybe 50 people, and you have consistent revenue in that, over $15 to $20 million. And that's when you can start to pivot to that. So coming back to your original question, and I hope this answers it. If you've got two founders, I don't like the Apple example because Steve Jobs was fantastic, but if you have the visionary and the Steve Wozniak, the engineer, you're almost better with that engineer in the beginning, starting and scaling. Jobs did get down and you saw the nitty gritty details, but that high level visionary almost needs to, I think, step back into supporting the business role. And then they are, if you want to split roles up, true president, true CEO, they're a great CEO. They don't belong in the day-to-day in the beginning of the company. And that's where you need the president, the operations guy.
Okay. So when you guys were, like, for example, discussing the vision, or vision high level, if you go down a level to operations or execution, what was the process? Just kind of like getting in the room and talking through it. How do you manage conflict? How do you how do you drive to clarity? How do you drive to precision? We're going to focus on this. We're going started with like a learning exercise and working backwards. Like, if this is the vision where we're going, these are the steps that we need to execute on to get there. What was your process?
Yeah, I'd say that during that period, that's what we did not do well. And a lot of that takes a lot of growth as leadership. Like, that's the reason Converge failed. And the reason WestGen succeeds now is we did not drive alignment as Converge through the leadership team at all. We had 5 different people call them C-suite, 6 different people on the C-suite. And you had 2 or 3 camps.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no consistency. Here's the last piece of real advice I will throw out there, as like, this is as important as fail fast and the hedgehog concept. Get a good executive coach that teaches you how to be a leader. Absolutely life-changing for us and the team. It was amazing. We had a employee net promoter score. We were terrible. We were minus 44. One year on ENPS. 1 year after bringing us in, I think we were 81.
Wow.
Plus 81. So it went from like bottom 10, 15% to top 1% in 12 months. And it was just implementing these different leadership techniques that this executive coach has. And our alignment now, so the secret is alignment. And we go and we have discussions where they're very round table.
Mm-hmm.
You beat up. We have a designated no person. So if everyone's in alignment, every meeting will pick a designated no person. That person has to be the devil's advocate and tear ideas apart. And we try and beat up everything, and then we walk out. And at the end of the day, I get a veto, yes, and I'm never going to pull that veto card unless absolutely positive, and everyone's going to get an explanation why. And they need to leave feeling that I didn't get my way, and I understand why. That then he's got this view. I know why he made the decision. I might not agree with it. I know why. And that drives alignment. And I think when you make a decision that not everybody wanted, you still have everybody on board. And everybody leaves that meeting and they chase the same direction. And we didn't do that before.
It's interesting that you say this. I mean, I've worked with some pretty big company, and I have yet to see a big company know how to set goals and drive alignment well. And so we provocatively say, when we do risk management work, we say, hey, your biggest risk is capital allocation. Where are you going to allocate your capital? And that's really the role of the CEO in terms of where that capital is going to get allocated. And so one way for us to kind of coach our clients is like, are you familiar with OKRs?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we've adopted from technology because, I mean, this is John Doerr inventing it for Intel, but this is the best way to create clarity and alignment in terms of where you're going. What are your objectives? What are the key results? How does each member contribute to this? And then we use Atlassian suite of products. So we use like Atlas and Confluence for the OKRs, because then you have instantaneous clarity. I'm working on this. This is how my contribution contributes to the overall success of this result or this objective. But a lot of companies don't do it well. I'm like, well, the best outcome you can derive is, if you're going from point A to point B, is to take the shortest path rather than zigzag along the way.
Do we have 2 minutes for a start on that quickly?
Please. So,
as we came out of the challenges, I was meeting with a mentor of mine, talking about frustrations at Converge. A gentleman named Steve Glanville. He's the CEO over at Step.
Okay.
And when I ended up stepping into the CEO role at WestGen and had some more control over the call it corporate policy and what we were going to do, he handed me a book called 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Okay.
And he said, so it's kind of like OKR, structured OKRs on handed me the book. He's like, this is the reason Step has done so well. Do this. We've implemented this through the company. And so I had the entire leadership read the book. We implemented it. There was a product that we'd been working on to try and push out for 2 years, a solar only ePod, air compressor package. Couldn't get it right. Implemented this 40X method. like in 6 months. We had multiple iterations, the whole thing was out, and it's phenomenal. So it's just like OKRs. You start top down, you set your strategy, and you go bottom up, and every single team has to develop their own
I like it.
goal as to how they're going to help the company accomplish that strategy. We have full buy-in through a team. We meet. Every team has weekly meetings that they talk about how things are going. There's scoreboards that are open to the team. We have fun games when we hit our goals.
Nice.
It's been awesome on driving alignment. So, Steve, thank you. I owe you
big shout out.
Huge level, appreciation here.
That's awesome, Ben. I know we're at time, but the conversation has been fantastic. I want to thank you for the time. If people want to follow you, where do they follow you? Do they look you up on LinkedIn? How do they get in touch? If a prospective customer is listening, they just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Ben, I need this for my well sites."
Yes, sir. So there's a number with WestGen on our website, but the best way to get a hold of me is LinkedIn. You can follow me there. I've been actually, from feedback from a group in our company, started doing weekly energy updates. So I'd love some feedback on how those are going. I'm trying to get those perfected. So if anyone's interested, hop on LinkedIn. I'm trying to release those on Friday and shoot some feedback on what I can do to improve in the comments.
That's awesome, Ben. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening.
Maxim, pleasure.